Welcome to episode 14 of Ping, a Firewalls.com podcast, a bi-weekly look at cybersecurity, including top products, the latest trends, news, expert tips, and interviews with top security industry company representatives. I'm Kevin Baxter, and I'm joined by my Firewalls.com colleague, Andrew Harmon.
Hello.
Hey, Andrew. As we dive into a different featured topic each episode. New episodes come out every other Wednesday, so subscribe or follow on your favorite podcasting platform to get the latest one. And feel free to leave a comment or email us at podcast@firewalls.com with feedback or questions. As always, thanks for listening, and now it's time for our featured topic and to welcome our guest for this episode.
There's no denying that we live in a wireless world, and if you're a business, it's essential to have a wireless network set up. Internal Wi-Fi can improve your employees' productivity by creating a more flexible workspace, allowing connectivity in halls, conference rooms, and more. After all, who just stays tethered to their desktop these days? Plus, there are more connected devices than ever before. With Internet of Things technology becoming the norm, forecasts suggest this year will be around 6.5 connected devices per person worldwide. Doing some quick math, that means close to 50 billion connected devices in the world.
And if your business is public-facing like a retail outlet, bank, hotel, etc., if you don't offer Wi-Fi, you may be missing out on customers. It's no longer a pleasant bonus, it's an expectation that wireless be on the table. What's stopping some businesses from offering Wi-Fi? Concerns about cost, management, and of course, security. To talk about the state of wireless networking today and provide a primer on secure, cloud-managed Wi-Fi, we welcome WatchGuard Director of Product Management for Wi-Fi, Ryan Orsi. Ryan, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Great. And so before we delve into the wireless conversation, we like to get a quick look at the day in the life of our guests. So, Ryan, tell us about what your typical day is at WatchGuard.
Great question. Day in the life for me. Well, I joined WatchGuard in 2015, coming off of a stint in some antenna design and RF chipset design technologies with different startup companies, and came on board at WatchGuard as the head of the product management for the Wi-Fi line. And at the time, that meant access points managed by the UTM appliances. So what I do on a kind of daily basis is really evolve that product line. So I'm in charge of setting the roadmap, deciding kind of where we are going to be as a marketplace in a few years from now, and design the roadmap to get us there. And I do a lot of public speaking, enablements with our sales and marketing people within WatchGuard, and also a lot of thought leadership outside WatchGuard, like we're doing today with folks like yourselves.
Great. So at Firewalls.com, we love our small businesses here, so let's start there. So as far as the wireless landscape is concerned, if you had to assign a letter grade to SMBs out there, how do you think they're doing right now?
Oh, my dear SMBs. No offense. No offense, because I've met with many of them out there in the world. I actually, in a past life, used to be operations VP for a managed services provider, taking care of a lot of SMB businesses around the northwestern part of the U.S. And I would say, from being in the trenches and also now in my role at WatchGuard, they're somewhere at a D plus in terms of the letter grade on wireless security. And I say that for a few key reasons. Like, some things I've walked into aren't related so much to hacking into Wi-Fi, but just bad practices of having your guest Wi-Fi and your back office private Wi-Fi on the same physical network. That's pretty bad practice. Most SMBs out there aren't really looking at adding in wireless intrusion prevention system. It's a WIPS technology. Still pretty new to them, but that's really what you have to do to keep the attackers from eavesdropping on your Wi-Fi.
And are SMBs sort of aware of wireless being this big security breach, or is it more of a blind spot that they're not so concerned with?
I would have to say it's the latter. It's more of a blind spot. And, I don't think it's their fault. I do a lot of speaking around the world, different countries. And when I get on stage and we talk about, hey, we're here to talk about Wi-Fi hacking, a lot of people lean forward because they're like, hey, I kind of heard something about Wi-Fi not being so safe, so secure, but they're thinking mostly like if they're traveling at airports or hotels, they think somebody's eavesdropping. But what the SMBs aren't really getting from the mass media or really in a lot of journals out there is that those problems you've sort of heard about in the back of your mind about Wi-Fi, being able to be eavesdropped on, it applies to any Wi-Fi network, including their homes and, of course, the small businesses. And that's been one of the big jobs I've taken on at WatchGuard, is helping really kind of get the message and word out there just to raise awareness that Wi-Fi security is not typing a password on Wi-Fi. It's a little bit more.
I think I already kind of know the answer based on the letter grade that you gave, but what's really changed then in the past 10 years in the small business space in terms of how they handle Wi-Fi? And then bouncing off of that, also what's changed in terms of the technology available?
Yeah. So for the small business space in particular, this is a group of companies that they need technology to run their businesses more so than they needed even 10 years ago. Now it's sort of table stakes that you have Wi-Fi connected security cameras or employee badging systems that are also Wi-Fi enabled. If you're in the business of processing payments with credit cards or debit cards, a lot of those devices now are tablet oriented, Wi-Fi connected. So the big 10-year shift, in my opinion, is that wireless technology in the SMB space is no longer just an option. You have to have it as the table stakes for both running your business. And again, if, like you said, guys, if you're public facing, you have to have it as a amenity. Like it's a desired thing by most people out there. And the technology has evolved in 10 years to really make it easier for equipment manufacturers to integrate Wi-Fi into various products that SMB business owners or network admins, if they're in that position. So it's more accessible to them. They don't have to specifically go shop for, very deep technical speeds and feeds in their Wi-Fi enabled products anymore. Thanks to some of the work at the Wi-Fi Alliance, they're more accessible in terms of the latest, greatest technology, but that also comes with some security risks, as what we kind of look at WatchGuard is, well, these devices, these smart devices within an SMB office space or business premise, they are super easy to associate to Wi-Fi, broadcast Wi-Fi. Security is typically an afterthought in that environment. And that's where our CTO, myself, we all in his office, we all agree. Security is an afterthought with this kind of a market space. And we're trying to make sure people understand that there's an easy way to still use that Wi-Fi connected devices within their businesses, the smart TVs, the tablets, and not slow them down from being productive, but keep their business safe from breach, at least on the Wi-Fi front.
Well, the IoT devices that you mentioned, we see in the news all the time. Different vulnerability has been exploited in thermostats, cameras, etc. How much of it is taking a little bit of an extra focus on the security when they first set it up?
How much is in control of the SMB that's buying like that smart TV, that nice smart TV at Costco that was pretty a good deal, and they're going to bring it into the work? I actually think they're only in control of a small portion of the problem, meaning things like, hey, make sure you're connecting that to an SSID that at least has a passphrase, at least encrypted, not just an open one. That's what they can control, like as a SMB Wi-Fi user. But that smart TV itself, it has a high volume, highly commoditized Wi-Fi module that's been pre-certified for different countries by a handful of very large companies out there that are only interested in getting those modules put into as many TVs and coffee pots and toasters as possible. And when you're in that kind of a business, you're trying to just do high volume, low cost. Every additional R&D cycle is money, and it's a loss of return on investment for them, because would the SMB buyer purchase a smart TV for 10% more if it said it was, secure wireless versus the smart TV that was just wireless? That's the kind of problem we have that's really outside of the responsibility of the SMB, at least.
Hmm. So you mentioned the era of the speeds and feeds, the tech specs, reading all that and being sort of intimidated by all the numbers you see. That's an era in the past. So what are some of the new by-the-numbers metrics you would point people to if they're shopping for wireless security and specifically access points?
Access points, routers, as some people like to refer, but that's not correct for your small business. Thanks to the Wi-Fi Alliance, that's the organization that owns the trademark Wi-Fi, so they're a big deal. Thanks to them, they have simplified the naming, the branding of a new generation of Wi-Fi. It used to be, if you guys recall, walking down the aisle of your electronics store, you see 802.11.n and then AC wave 1 and wave 2. They've gotten away from the 802 dot, and now they're naming everything Wi-Fi 6 That's actually the current generation of Wi-Fi. And in terms of speeds and feeds, it's actually a pretty big deal, because if you guys have ever used Wi-Fi in what I call like highly dense spaces, like the airport, the shopping mall, and it's super slow when you're on their guest Wi-Fi, what do most of us do? We give up on Wi-Fi and we switch over to our LTE connection on our cell phone. Wi-Fi 6 has actually borrowed some of the technologies that make cellular work more reliably, and they've built it into the Wi-Fi 6 standard. It also is the first time in over 10 years that the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum has had a serious improvement. So for 10 years, access point manufacturers like WatchGuard and the chipset companies that we put inside of our products, we haven't really touched 2.4 gigahertz in 10 years until Wi-Fi 6 came out. So if you're a shopper out there, Wi-Fi 6 is going to be a bit more expensive, and you're not totally going to see the speed increase until maybe 2 or 3 years from now, when everybody in your office has brand new laptops and watches and phones that also have Wi-Fi 6 inside of them. Because remember, an access point is called like the base station, right? It sends and receives Wi-Fi signals. If it's Wi-Fi 6, all of your phones and laptops and even smart TVs, they also have to be Wi-Fi 6 in order for the speed to be felt there. Right. So it's a little early, but that's the latest, greatest.
Just touching on something to clear up that misconception, you mentioned it, router versus an access point. Give a quick explanation of the difference for those who may be linguistically challenged there.
Sure thing. We get this all the time in the SMB space. And I used to have customer accounts before WatchGuard with the same kind of confusion. So a router, which you're probably most familiar like in your home, is what that internet provider, that cable company brings into your house. And it is a layer 3 device. So it's able to route traffic, which means like it'll have a WAN side connection to the internet with a certain IP address, and it'll have a separate network for your internal network. And it routes traffic from internal to external. An access point, it's a layer 2 device. It's just a bridge, which means that any traffic coming from one side of it, like the Wi-Fi side, will be passed right through to the cable side, the Ethernet cable. So really that difference is routers route traffic from internet outside world to inside, and access points are just layer 2 bridges, passing everything back and forth without really routing that traffic.
Makes sense. So speaking of some of the concerns that we mentioned earlier that could still be holding small business owners back potentially from deploying a Wi-Fi network, cost, management, security, those types of things. As technology has evolved over time, are a lot of these barriers to entry a little less of a barrier now in terms of accessibility for small businesses?
Absolutely. Yeah. That, I mean, even speaking from experience being in the trenches as a managed services provider, deploying all sorts of IT and security equipment for SMBs, the Wi-Fi network equipment was always kind of kludgy, meaning what speeds and feeds do you need for this business, and what model should I buy, and how do I configure it, and how do I know I configured it properly? Did I leave anything open to hacking? Those are really unknowns, quote unquote, back in the day. Many vendors, including WatchGuard, that are manufacturing Wi-Fi access points, have come a long ways to make the kind of marketing term of plug and play really come to life. So you'll see that many of us, including WatchGuard, with our Wi-Fi cloud managed APs, we focus on things like having the ability to pre-configure your access points with your mobile device, your mobile phone. So you, for example, if you're buying a few APs from Firewalls.com, before they arrive, you should be able to get your phone out, actually, set your Wi-Fi name and passwords. That way, when it comes to the day of plugging in your access points into your office, that's literally all you do. You unbox them and you plug them in to your network switch, and it should automatically grab the configuration. And most of us, including WatchGuard, our default configurations are built with kind of like, the best practices for Wi-Fi connectivity and performance. And in the case of WatchGuard, we focus heavily on security too.
So cost and management and sort of ease of deployment aside, WatchGuard's obvious priority here is security, so much so that you guys have a petition set up to establish a trusted wireless environment. What does this mean to WatchGuard, and why is that so important to you guys as a company?
Oh, yes, supremely important to us. So, the trusted wireless environment, just to kind of explain what that is, it is a term that we created, but we created for every single vendor. We love Cisco, Sophos, Ruckus, Aruba. We'd love them all to start to use the term trusted wireless environment. And what it really is it's a technical definition to really clarify a lot of the ambiguity around Wi-Fi hacking, and especially around the terminology of wireless intrusion prevention system, or WIPS. For example, from experience, the last few years at WatchGuard, we go out and we tell people that Wi-Fi hacking is a problem, and we ask them very simply, tell me the definition of what a rogue access point is. And if we ask 5 people, we get 5 totally different answers, and maybe one of them's correct, but there actually is, according, this is what we did with the trusted wireless environment, is boil down the definitions of exactly how many Wi-Fi threats are there, how do they work, and how do you test your network to see if you're vulnerable to them. And then, of course, if you're not vulnerable to them, you are compliant. So you can consider yourself trusted wireless environment compliant, for example, if you can block 6 Wi-Fi threats. And most all of the news you've read over the past 21 years, since Wi-Fi has been in our lives in a modern sense, can be traced back to these 6 fundamental, honestly, 21-year-old Wi-Fi hacks. And that's what that trusted wireless environment is all about. There's a website, trustedwirelessenvironment.com, where you're right, we're asking people to give up their email address so we can send them some toothpaste ads. I'm just kidding. So we can use their email address to walk into the IEEE, to the Wi-Fi Alliance, and help kind of educate them too. And because those are the companies that actually set the new standards for Wi-Fi 7, Wi-Fi 8, whatever's coming in the future. And we want to kind of bring to them, hey, the general public, the IT, the security community, the SMBs, they do think that there should be a new global standard for Wi-Fi security, because we honestly kind of missed it 21 years ago. And that's what that's all about.
And so you've mentioned a couple of those dangers out there relating to wireless networks. We talked a little bit about rogue access points just now. You mentioned the spoofing possibilities earlier on as well. So with WatchGuard in particular, how does the secure Wi-Fi offered by WatchGuard help stop those threats?
Good question. Yeah, I love that we're getting here. So to be very specific for your listeners there, if you head to trustedwirelessenvironment.com, you'll see there are exactly 6 Wi-Fi threats. Of those 6, the most dangerous, meaning the one that is super easy to perform. Actually, you can try this out on YouTube right now. Just keep our voices in the background. Go to YouTube on your device, type in Evil Twin Wi-Fi Evil Twin. And that is threat number 2 that's the most dangerous. And it's super simple. And to give you guys an example, like in your office right now, you're probably connected to Wi-Fi. If I came into your office with a battery-powered access point and broadcasted the exact same Wi-Fi name as your office, your laptops, your phones, even your smart TV, it'll eventually connect to my battery-powered device is now an evil twin. It's like an evil copy. And once you're connected to my evil twin, you're still getting internet service. So you're still conducting this podcast, browsing the web, checking your email, ordering things on your favorite e-commerce site. And somebody like me could be stealing your passwords, your credit card numbers, your social media profiles, completely pwning you. And you have no idea because it's transparent. This all happens at a very low layer in the OSI model at layer 2. So with WatchGuard, we really took our roadmap a few years ago and went very deep into wireless intrusion prevention system, WIPS. And I'll just make a quick public service announcement. There is no standard. There's no industry definition of what an access point manufacturer has to include in terms of features to market that they have WIPS. So WIPS from WatchGuard is totally different than WIPS from Meraki or Aruba or anybody else. And the same goes for the other vendors. And our WIPS, it's designed software inside of our access points to monitor for these 6 threats that I've been talking about, such as the evil twin, so that when the bad person comes into physical airspace of your office or maybe even your parking lot outside and tries to broadcast that evil twin, the WatchGuard AP with its WIP software, those radios are constantly monitoring for this. And when it finds an imposter, it sends out wireless signals called deauthentication frames. And it basically breaks the connection of that evil twin and anybody connected to it repeatedly, like every millisecond. So it neutralizes the threat and prevents the threat from causing any harm.
And so just to clarify here, if you look at your list of connections and there happens to be an evil twin in there, there will not be any sort of pencil-thin mustache to indicate that this is the evil twin as opposed to the good one?
Correct. That is why I say, and I've said it with the Wi-Fi Alliance in the audience, and I love what they do, and I really do, but 21 years ago, that's the fundamental thing that we messed up with Wi-Fi, is anybody can broadcast any Wi-Fi network name, including Insert your favorite coffee shop here, your favorite fast food restaurant, your favorite airport. How about the airplane? You're in a nice steel tube connected to what you hope is your airline's Wi-Fi. But in your list of networks on your phone or laptop, you have no way to distinguish visually, is this the real Wi-Fi network or the evil one? You really don't know. And it's not your fault. It's actually built into the definitions of the way Wi-Fi protocol works.
And I imagine in a lot of these public places, you might not even know what the Wi-Fi actually is called in the first place. You're just kind of guessing based on where you are and what you see. So that makes it doubly possible for you to fall into this trap.
Absolutely. Super fun. If for guys like me that want to kind of play around with people, yeah, you're in the airport lounge. Oh, I did a really awesome LinkedIn video on this. There is a very legal way for your listeners, the legal way to do your own evil twin assessment. So if you're in a public place and you want to see like, hey, I'm at my bank, they have guest Wi-Fi. I want to see if my bank actually is vulnerable to an evil twin attack. You can actually do a very safe, very legal 60-second test with your cell phone, your laptop, and you do need a $99 penetration testing tool called the Wi-Fi Pineapple. With those three things, you can absolutely do an evil twin assessment. And those public places, 99% of them fail the test because it's just not on their radar to be looking out for these things.
So you do that just for fun? You hop around to some of these public places and check it out?
Myself and a small army of WatchGuard people, and even some of our resellers and their end customers are beginning to do this. And we see more of these posts on social media with the hashtag Trust Your Wi-Fi. It's a great kind of movement to support that. Please sign the petition. How is it that we can be this far along with Wi-Fi, like 13 something active devices today, 13 billion, today. We're that far along. My grandparents know what Wi-Fi is, but it's so easy to go to YouTube and buy a Wi-Fi Pineapple. A Pineapple is a third-party company from Hack5. They do an amazing job, and it's a legit pen testing tool, but it just highlights how much damage you can do with the Wi-Fi protocol.
And how much does that really help you get through to, you mentioned talking to small businesses around the country, really. You can say it all you want, that there are these threats out there, but as you said, most of them haven't necessarily been victimized by any of these attacks yet. They're just not really in compliance. So how much does something like that, a demonstration, drive that point home?
Oh, so valuable. The old saying of see it to believe it absolutely applies here. People, and specifically, if you follow me on LinkedIn, my LinkedIn profile is super cryptic. It's just Ryan Orsi. But you'll see through my feed some of these social videos of us doing it in a public place. And yeah, that makes it super simple because you literally walk into the small businesses, conference room, or if it's even a restaurant. We've done it at restaurants. We're out there having some food and we just take a battery powered Wi-Fi Pineapple and we broadcast the same, restaurant Wi-Fi and connect our cell phone to it. And we wait about 30 seconds, 60 seconds. And if the phone stays connected to that evil twin, then the whole location is totally vulnerable to this. It fails the test. If it is disconnected, then there is some wireless intrusion prevention, some security running in this environment from an access point that actually detected the evil twin and kicked us off of it. So pretty simple test to do. And really, really valuable to show an SMB user like your small business could be taken advantage of pretty easily.
Yeah,
right. So we touched on IoT a bit earlier, and obviously this is something we talk about on the podcast here a lot. There seems to be new vulnerabilities and creative ways to take advantage of IoT every single week. So what's WatchGuard's strategy when it comes to plugging up these elusive security holes?
Oh, man, yes. These little devices, super convenient, right? That's kind of the age-old cybersecurity battle is user convenience versus security. And IoT devices, we just love them because they're super convenient. The doorbells are awesome. The cameras are cool. The remote coffee start is pretty awesome too. They're all typically Wi-Fi or Bluetooth enabled in some way. So I'm getting a little bit off of the Wi-Fi track. But with WatchGuard, we definitely advise from a SMB business perspective, their network, absolutely segment your network. Meaning if you have IoT devices, and I'm talking printers, cameras, TVs, sensors, door sensors, alarm systems, all that kind of stuff, you can just guarantee there's a ton of software vulnerabilities in the firmware of those products. Just realize that, accept it. And if you're using something like a WatchGuard Firebox for your firewall, segment that traffic onto a different network so it can't leak into your private network where you might have things like, employee payroll or sensitive documents or sensitive engineering information. Make sure those are network segmented away, your IoT network and the rest of what you do. So that's kind of what we do from a networking perspective. With Wi-Fi and the product line that I'm in charge of with our access points, we kind of apply the same thing. If there is a Wi-Fi IoT device, we want to make sure we're not just associating that to even our guest Wi-Fi or our private Wi-Fi. So typically we'll have a best practice here is to set up your own SSID for IoT, make it hidden so it's not one of those broadcasted ones, make it encrypted so it has more of a chance of staying secure. And of course, we know there's tons of folks out there searching for these IoT devices. That's preventable from a Wi-Fi perspective if you turn on a setting that most vendors have, including WatchGuard, called client isolation. So somebody connected to your guest Wi-Fi can't just look at other devices that are also connected to your guest Wi-Fi, including perhaps a really vulnerable IoT device that they're going to be playing around with. And our wireless intrusion prevention that's included in our secure Wi-Fi license and our total Wi-Fi license, that is all the features that make sure that the employees of your business and the IoT devices within your business cannot be fooled. And it's usually not fooled by like a human being fooled, but your device's radios cannot be fooled into connecting to things like an evil twin access point. So that's really, really important. It's something unique to just WatchGuard is to make sure that everything in your SMB building that's Wi-Fi enabled, including printers, those are sweet targets for attackers because they're all Wi-Fi enabled. And a lot of printers actually have access points inside of them that no one knows about. Make sure everything in that building cannot accidentally be tricked into connecting to something like a pineapple that's running an evil twin attack.
It really sounds like the IoT boom is a little bit like the initial wireless adoption situation where everyone got so excited about the technology that they didn't develop some of these security standards that maybe could benefit everybody down the road.
You got it. And, this is to point back to that trustedwirelessenvironment.com and that whole petition. The reason that exists, right, is those IoT device manufacturers. And a lot of the times it's like if you're talking about a doorbell, right, an IoT doorbell, they're not building the Wi-Fi radio themselves from scratch. They're buying a very high volume, low cost module from another company. Both of those companies, the module company and the actual doorbell vendor company, they're not going to be adding additional security unless someone makes them, right? And somebody that would make them would be the industry orgs that set the standards. That's why we're so focused on, WatchGuard has an access point that can fix these security problems kind of like an aftermarket solution, right? But you have to go back to the source in order to fix the problem worldwide. As much as my selfish opinion, I wish everybody had a WatchGuard access point. I know that's not going to be realistic. And so to really solve this problem, we have to also start the process of going back to the standards organizations and saying, hey, if there were a new security standard to take care of this from the top, the doorbell manufacturer, the Wi-Fi module manufacturer, they would all have to comply because they wouldn't be allowed to even bring that to market until it complied.
That does seem like a good direction to head. Switching gears a little bit back to the idea of management. So we've talked about accessibility for a small business being a lot simpler now. You mentioned how configuration of a WatchGuard AP in particular can be pretty simple with just an app, basically. But managing the WatchGuard APs is done through the Wi-Fi cloud. So what does the management platform of the Wi-Fi cloud offer, especially for someone, again, who may not be as technically savvy?
Oh, yes. If you're listening and you've had people in your office complain to you or you're one of those complainers about like, hey, Joe, who happens to be the IT person for the business, but also runs the front office and their accounting, and they're complaining about I can't print or that the webinar was slow or the Wi-Fi is slow or better yet, the internet is slow. Those kind of problems. Man, they are so ambiguous, right? So what WatchGuard's Wi-Fi cloud that you only get with a secure or a total Wi-Fi license, what it's been built to do is to use the power of the cloud to track a ton of packet level information about client devices and access points. And out of that gigantic set of data, we actually present to non-technical people very simple reasons to like, why is the Wi-Fi slow today? And that's what the value of that cloud is all about. You'll see in one of the applications inside called Discover, because you're discovering problems to your network, you'll actually see one of the charts show up and say, I have this many users trying to connect to Wi-Fi right now. 10 of them were successful. One person seems to be typing in the wrong Wi-Fi password. And here's a whole report showing me all the times they tried to connect and the password they typed in. So when those people say that I can't connect, well, at least the SMB person can log in and have more of like the record of truth. Like, no, did you do it today at 11:46 a.m. Pacific time? And they'll go, wow, yeah, I did. Well, you typed in this instead of that. And the other kind of things that it really does is it makes it super simple to manage multiple SMB offices and locations. We have a very successful chain of dental offices that are using the Wi-Fi cloud, and we're talking hundreds of little SMB offices around the nation. And managing all of that from a high level, meaning can somebody quickly look at a dashboard and determine that the reason why users are having a slowness today is actually the internet provider's DNS server? That's the kind of answer that they can get very quickly looking at it. And it also tracks things like Office 365 latency. So if people are using their email and they're having trouble there, this also tracks more than just Wi-Fi problems. Because let's face it, anytime a user complains about the internet being slow, they usually blame Wi-Fi because that's what they're connected to. And sometimes it's not even Wi-Fi's fault. But we put a lot of effort into trying to make that very crystal clear for those people that have to take those user complaints and produce something in response to them.
Yeah. Just wrapping up then, one other question that I think some people may have is, you mentioned a lot of people have some sort of Wi-Fi setup already. What if they're hearing this and they're interested in getting some of the features that WatchGuard offers and they have some different brands mixed in?
Oh, my Ubiquiti SMB customer. I love you guys. Yeah, if you have an access point today, even a router from your internet service provider, and that's all you have in your office, and it's providing Wi-Fi, and you're scared to death after listening to this podcast about all the Wi-Fi hacks that you're probably vulnerable to, but you don't want to go replace your Ubiquiti AP or your Ruckus or Meraki, right? You want to keep those in there because maybe you just bought 5 years of cloud licensing with that company and you're like, I don't want to rip it out right now. Wi-Fi is working okay, but I'm concerned about this security problem. All of the WatchGuard APs, they operate in a secondary mode. It's just a software mode, and they can actually be configured to be not an AP anymore, but they can be configured to be a dedicated WIP security device. And they will actually go protect other brands of access points. So, for example, there's a new Wi-Fi report called the Miercom Wi-Fi Security Report on our website at WatchGuard.com. And you guys can see where this company tested WatchGuard APs in the secondary mode, this WIP security mode, actually protecting Ubiquiti, Ruckus, Aruba, and Meraki access points. They could still get the security benefit from WatchGuard and still use their existing Wi-Fi. If anyone is interested in the other benefits I mentioned about like troubleshooting Wi-Fi very easily, that requires a full replacement of all the other APs with WatchGuard APs, but you can still keep your other APs if you just want the security benefits. And that requires a secure Wi-Fi license, or a total technically.
All right. Ryan, anything else you wanted to add?
Just a standard public service announcement. Please go to trustedwirelessenvironment.com. A lot of words, but it's our best chance, and sign that petition. It's our best chance at starting the multi-year process of affecting the way we all use Wi-Fi more securely. So that'd be my PSA for the day. And thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. It's time to take a look at headlines. In this regular segment, we discuss a few top news stories in the network security world and what they may mean to you. We'll start with headline, you guessed it, number 1. Huawei's offer to license 5G tech to a U.S. firm to create an American rival is, quote, still on the table. We've mentioned Huawei a few times on Ping without doing a story specifically about them. Usually the company comes up in relation to a separate story about American cybersecurity concerns with Chinese firms. This time we're giving Huawei the spotlight. So last year, Huawei CEO Ren Zhengfei said the company would be willing to license its 5G technology exclusively to an American firm so that the U.S. could create a rival, basically allowing whichever company took them up on the offer to compete with them on 5G networks.
Well, that's awful nice of them.
Seems nice. Yeah. They must have some sort of motivation for this, though.
Right. And Huawei's been slammed multiple times by the U.S. government over the last several years around concerns that the telecommunications company could be baking in backdoors for the Chinese government, allowing the state to monitor web traffic, spy on competitions, and sabotage foreign business entities. So this is not a new battle. This is definitely something that's been raging over the last 3, 4, 5 years now.
Yeah, so basically, Wren told CNBC in September that a license could include Huawei's proprietary 5G tech, including source code, hardware, software, verification, production, and manufacturing know how, with the idea that the technology can be used for a firm to compete worldwide. Because right now, there really aren't that many firms that do exactly what Huawei does, and none of them are US firms right now.
Yes, and it'll be a bit of an uphill battle for them to get into the American markets here. The U.S. added Huawei and its affiliates to a blacklist known as the Entity List, set up and maintained by the Bureau of Industry and Security, basically blacklisting them from any government contract work and also preventing any U.S. firms from selling or transferring technology to Chinese companies without a special license.
And so I think we know the U.S. position, and the U.S. has been making its position clear to other countries around the world as well, but hasn't always translated into not adopting Huawei. The UK just recently allowed Huawei to supply equipment to help build its 5G mobile network in spite of US objections and even some threats from the US of an impact on intelligence sharing if they do go forward. But the UK believes they can contain any surveillance risk as they already deal with Huawei equipment on their current 3G and 4G networks.
Yeah, and this is a very serious concern for the U.S. government when it comes to their European allies working with Huawei, to the point that U.S. Attorney General Barr has in the past suggested that the U.S. government should go as far as purchasing controlling stakes in European competitors such as Ericsson and Nokia that we're familiar with, and using those controlling stakes to ensure that Huawei's growth is stifled over the next decade.
Yeah, so in particular, the UK is planning to limit Huawei to a cap of 35% for each of the countries for mobile phone operators, and that would require the consent of Parliament. But if they didn't use Huawei, they're concerned that it would cost them hundreds of millions of dollars more and delay the rollout of 5G by a couple or a few years, which would really put them behind the curve.
A little bit behind, yeah. Do you see any companies here in America taking up this offer?
So an op-ed also on CNBC's website does suggest that there really isn't just one American company that can do what Huawei does, kind of an end-to-end solution for setting up this 5G technology. But there are some American companies that are certainly involved in 5G tech, like Qualcomm and Intel. This particular op-ed writer suggests that the best solution for the U.S., if they want to develop some sort of worldwide competitor to Huawei, they're going to need to sort of Frankenstein it together. So create an international alliance between U.S. and foreign companies. You mentioned Ericsson and Nokia as a couple of possibilities there who do more of what Huawei does. They're not American companies. But if the U.S. kind of worked with them, backed by some American government funding, they might be able to put together some sort of complete Wi-Fi, rather 5G package. Got Wi-Fi on the brain today. 5G package that could be a direct competitor to Huawei for all these other countries that are still looking at adoption phase.
Yeah, this is a bit reminiscent of the arms race during the Cold War, except instead of going to the moon, we're going to 5G.
Now for headline number 2, 7 tax season security tips. So like the Super Bowl, Christmas, the Oscars, tax time comes around every year, but for some reason people get less excited about it than those other examples. You have any idea why?
No, I mean, I like tax season. I usually get a gift at the end of it, so I don't see why it's such a downer for everybody else. But, it's just like the holiday season. The tax season has its mascots, phishing, phone scams, the big guys.
And again, it harkens back to a couple of headlines that we've done in recent episodes where the bad guys are looking for the thing that you're thinking about right now. We talked about the census. We talked about the Grammys. We talked about coronavirus. If it's something that's popular or unpopular in this case, they'll be trying to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and tax season is especially ripe time because it involves a lot of documents being electronically sent back and forth between multiple entities, especially businesses. So it's a very ripe target now.
And people might jump if they see something from the IRS saying you're going to be audited if you don't send me X, Y, and Z. So the IRS is warning people to be on the lookout for things like the aforementioned phone scams, phishing emails, and more. They've got a website to help educate you called Identity Theft Central. And we'll have that link in the description. The site has information about how to protect yourself from what's called tax-related identity theft and what to do if you are victimized. And this 7 tax season security tips article. You want to start with number one?
Yeah, we'll kick us off. Companies should schedule a pre-tax season training session to inform and educate their employees about staying safe in the coming months. So ideally, this would be after the holidays. Rush is all over, but before tax season begins. So, early January, mid-January.
Or now if you haven't done it just yet.
Yeah, it's never too late. But this would just be a quick training exercise to let your employees know what to keep an eye out for, what to expect from the company, and what not to expect from the company.
Yep, and number 2 on that list was teaching staff about business email compromises, which can be done at the same time, I would say, as that session. But the article lists a couple of scary examples, including spear phishing emails that ask for all of the employees' W-2s of your business, or maybe an email that needs to update company tax info coming from the IRS or something of that nature. So we talked about spear phishing in our prior episode, and this is right in that wheelhouse.
Number 3, make use of digital signatures when sending and receiving documents. Lila Key, general manager at Global Sign, recommends that companies send W-2s and 1099 forms electronically with a digital signature and also encrypt the session in which employees are able to download the document.
Number 4, explain clearly what the company won't do when communicating about tax forms. So, if you do get one of those emails and they ask you for something, then your company won't be sharing that information anyway, so you shouldn't either.
Right. So your company will not be sending you a text message saying that you'll be arrested if you don't do your taxes. So keep an eye out. Number 5, have procedures in place for a tax season breach. This one seems pretty self-explanatory. You should probably have procedures for any type of breach, but especially during the tax season, it might not be a bad idea to have a very specific, dedicated plan in place for that.
Number 6 is SMBs should not think they are immune from a tax season hack. Just like with security of their Wi-Fi, as we talked about earlier, you can't just think that you can skate along and never get targeted. And the article mentions a lot of breaches have occurred in this time frame. Whether or not they're all related to tax season is up in the air, really. But SMBs are just as much of a target as anybody these days, and individuals included. So, and again, we talked about that in our previous episode. There's nobody who's not a target anymore.
Number 7, this kind of ties into all the others, but beware of phishing, especially for contractors sending and receiving W-9 forms. A company called Cofense recently issued a warning that businesses may be targeted by an Emotet-style scam in which hackers request W-9s and then fraudulently file tax returns on behalf of the victims.
Yeah, that would be a problem. So that's the 7, but the IRS, just to reiterate to everybody, speaking of what your business will say that they won't do, the IRS says it will never initiate contact with taxpayers by email, text, or social media to request personal or financial information. So that pretty much means anytime you get an email that says it's from the IRS, it's not true. They'll never call taxpayers with threats of lawsuits or arrest, or call, email, or text to request taxpayer identity protection numbers, PIN numbers, in other words, which you might use to e-file. So basically that says any of this stuff that you may be getting contacted with that says it's from the IRS is probably not from the IRS.
If it's not in the mail, it's probably not them. And if it seems suspicious, it's free to give a call to the IRS and double check.
And now for headline number 3. 25 companies that phishing hackers most likely to impersonate. Are most likely to impersonate. So this is a list of 25 companies. It's actually a list that's updated every quarter. Hadn't come across it before, but this is the 4th quarter of 2019 worldwide edition of Phishers Favorites Top 25. And it's an interesting list. I think most of the list makes some sense.
Let's just go ahead and highlight a few of these 25. I'll give you the top 5 is PayPal, a number 1 spot. Very good target for hackers. A lot of credit card information there. Facebook, number 2, Microsoft, Netflix, and in number 5, WhatsApp.
We've talked about WhatsApp a little bit. That's a really popular app internationally, not really so popular in the U.S., but right. You can see how popular it is internationally if it's in the top 5.
Right, and speaking of WhatsApp, this one snagged the big winner in the category for largest growth. Between Q3 and Q4, WhatsApp phishing occurrences grew by 13,000%.
That seems like a large number.
Right, especially compared to its runner-ups Square and M&T Bank, which grew by a more modest 300 and 500% roughly.
Drop in the bucket. So basically this list is saying that hackers are posing as these organizations to try and get your information via social engineering emails, and they're using them because you might expect to be contacted by any of these entities. Other ones on the list outside of the top 5, but some big ones: Bank of America, Apple, Amazon, Chase, Instagram, Dropbox, Comcast. I think we talked about Comcast Xfinity just in our previous episode as a culprit. And Google, Adobe, all of those, some pretty big names on the list. There may be a few that you don't recognize, but that probably means that just about everyone who does use some of those other services is getting targeted.
Right, and this report is put together by Vade Secure, which analyzed emails from 600 million inboxes worldwide, so pretty large, diverse sample size there. I noted a lot of financial services and banking groups on this list, which makes sense. There's a lot of money in those industries to go after, but also a lot of names that small businesses should be familiar with for cloud-based applications and programs they might use, like Dropbox or Adobe or Square.
Yep, or DocuSign is on there as well, which is a pretty popular one if you're doing any kind of transacting online. So really the bottom line for sharing this is following up a little bit on what we just talked about with the tax identity theft. These are companies that are at top of mind for a lot of people. They use them all the time and are used to getting some kind of automated emails from them. I mean, if you don't turn off certain notifications, Facebook could email you about 100 times a day.
Right.
PayPal, of course, if you're making any purchases, or, they also send you offers and things of that nature. Amazon, Netflix, all those types of things. They will send you emails. So this isn't even quite as simple as saying if you get an email from X, it's not legit, because that's not necessarily the case. But it goes back to what we just said. You really need to verify a couple of ways before you do anything in terms of sharing account information, clicking on attachments, etc.
Kevin, was there any names or industries that you're surprised weren't on this list?
Well, I think I was a little surprised at the position of some of these on the list. I mean, Amazon's pretty much everywhere, but
I expect them to be in the top 5.
Yeah. Then again, I think the more I thought about it, we are talking about an international, worldwide list. So Amazon's not everywhere in terms of access for people, or at least is not as ubiquitous in other parts of the world necessarily. So really that top 5 does encompass things that anybody anywhere pretty much can use.
Mm-hmm. Pretty global. I noticed a lack of anything like dating sites or hookup apps, stuff
That's
like
true.
that. I kind of assume that would be in there. That seems like something you
with
would.
those. So
Well. But I assume if you get an email from those sites and you're involved with them, you might click pretty quickly. So it seems like it'd be a ripe target. Not that I'm suggesting hackers should pursue this, but
someone's taking notes right now.
I figured at least one would be in the top 25 here.
Yeah, we talked about Ashley Madison on our last episode as one of the places that had dealt with a hack, but that was on the other end of things, not necessarily being used as a phishing lure, basically. But you're right. I mean, there are definitely people out there who would probably jump if they saw an email, a certain type of email from
Your information has been breached again. That's an click right there.
At Firewalls.com, we're fortunate to have a team of certified network engineers who offers a variety of services for top security brands like firewall configurations, endpoint deployment, and expert support, to name a few.
And on our Engineers Minutes, one of our experts will take a moment each episode to provide a tip or answer a question, and that's where you come in. So leave us a question in the comments or email us at podcast@firewalls.com, and you just may get your question answered in a future episode.
So in the spirit of secure Wi-Fi, our engineer Anthony checks in with a set of simple tips to help you keep your wireless network safe and secure.
For starters, I recommend that you do broadcast your SSID. While not broadcasting your SSID might keep your network hidden from the average Joe, there are many tools available that will make discovering your SSID quite simple. More importantly, this can provide a security risk because when users set their devices to automatically connect to that SSID, a broadcasted ID will take priority over one that is not broadcasted. So if someone were to broadcast the same SSID, your users might join their network by mistake. The second step would be to use proper encryption, which means setting your wireless device to use WPA2. Both WEP and WPA1 are now easily cracked with publicly available software. Any devices that cannot use WPA2 should be replaced if possible or segregated from the rest of the network. Step 3 would be to make sure you set a secure password. The most important thing here is to not use a dictionary word, which makes a brute force attack using all dictionary words incredibly simple. Preferably, your password should be more than 8 characters with random alphanumerics, capitalization, and special characters. We mentioned segregating traffic earlier. Step 4 would be to set your guest network to not have access to your internal network. On most wireless devices, you can configure this from within the device itself, but if not, you can physically segregate by setting up an AP on a different port on your router with a different subnet and restrict traffic between those two networks. You'll also want to put a password on your guest network simply to reduce the chances of it being abused by next-door neighbors who will potentially be using up your bandwidth or creating a legal liability by doing something illegal with your public IP address. My final tip is to attempt to reduce the power of your access points so that your wireless network does not broadcast beyond the boundaries of the space you need to provide wireless for. This reduces your chances that your wireless will be used by somebody outside of the company.
To learn more about what our network engineers can do for your business, give us a call at 866-403-5305 or go to Firewalls.com/services.
And thanks for joining us for this episode of Ping, a Firewalls.com podcast. And thanks again to WatchGuard's Ryan Orsi for joining us as well to talk about wireless and a trusted wireless environment. Check out the links in the description to learn more, as well as our blog, firewalls.com/blog. Subscribe or follow now to ensure you get the latest episodes as soon as they're available. And please do rate and review us wherever you listen to the podcast. Visit firewalls.com for all your network security needs and give us a follow on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. For Andrew Harmon, I'm Kevin Baxter. We will be back soon with another episode, but in the meantime, we remind you to
Get secure,
stay secure.